You want to know why some men rise in business while others disappear into the background. Why do certain people seem to bend the boardroom to their will, while others fight for scraps of recognition? It isn't luck. It isn't talent. It's psychology. The kind that Machiavelli understood centuries ago, before modern management, before branding, before networking became a word. He knew that human nature, not strategy, decides who climbs and who falls. He knew that every empire, whether political or corporate, rests on the same fragile psychology of power. Understand this. The business world is not a marketplace. It's a battlefield disguised as one. Every deal, every partnership, every smiling handshake hides an invisible war for influence, information, and control. And in that war, Machiavelli's principles are not relics of the past. They are manuals for survival. When you strip away the polite language and clean suits, business success comes down to one truth. Those who understand the mind command the game. And that is precisely what Machiavelli mastered, the psychology of advantage. In this monologue, we will break down how Machiavellian psychology still governs modern success, how understanding perception, manipulation, necessity, and fear can make or break your empire. By the end, you'll know why the smartest executives never play fair. They play human nature. If you're ready to see how ancient cunning builds modern empires, stay until the end. In the next few minutes, you're going to understand why most people fail in business. Not because they lack talent, but because they lack strategy. Why playing fair often leaves you broke, while those who quietly bend the rules rise to power. And most importantly, how Machiavelli's psychological principles can turn your ambition into a weapon of influence, making you not just successful, but untouchable in the ruthless game of business. Comment below. I play the game with my eyes open. Let's begin. What if the ultimate playbook for corporate giants and game-changing CEOs wasn't dreamed up at Harvard, but scribbled down by an exiled politician in 16th century Italy? For 500 years, Niccolò Machiavelli's The Prince has been the secret manual for anyone who believes that power is a game. Written around 1513, this wasn't some lofty philosophical text about how the world should be. It was a brutally honest guide on how power is actually won, used, and held onto in the real world. Machiavelli, a diplomat from Florence, wrote it after being booted from political life. He was trying to regain the good graces of the ruling Medici family by offering them a roadmap for staying in power during chaotic times. Ever since, his name has become a synonym for cunning, manipulation, and winning at all costs. The word Machiavellian literally means scheming, duplicitous, and acting in bad faith. But what if we've been reading him all wrong? What if, under that controversial surface, Machiavelli's work isn't about being evil, but about understanding the uncomfortable hidden truths of human psychology? And what if those 500 years old ideas are the real reason some companies dominate while others just die? In this video, we're breaking down the 7 core psychological principles from that playbook that are secretly shaping today's business world. We'll see how visionaries from Steve Jobs to Jeff Bezos have, whether they knew it or not, used these exact strategies to build their empires. This isn't about turning you into a tyrant in the corner office. It's about understanding the raw, unfiltered psychology of power that they don't teach you in business school. The first principle: is it better to be feared or loved? Let's start with Machiavelli's most infamous and most misunderstood piece of advice. It is much safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. At first glance, that sounds like a green light for tyranny, ruling with an iron fist. But the psychological reality is way more nuanced, and it's incredibly relevant in any modern office. Machiavelli wasn't promoting cruelty for cruelty's sake. He was making a cold, hard assessment of human nature. Love, he said, is based on a sense of obligation. And because people are naturally fickle, They'll break that bond whenever it's convenient for them. Fear, on the other hand, is held in place by a dread of punishment, which never fails. In business, this means a leader who is only loved is weak. Sure, warmth and camaraderie are great, but they can also lead to a lack of discipline. A boss who's desperate to be liked will duck the hard decisions, putting their own popularity ahead of the company's health. The psychological core here isn't about terror, it's about respect. Fear, in the Machiavellian sense, means establishing clear authority and consequences. It's the understanding that underperformance won't be tolerated, and the leader has the guts to enforce standards. Surprisingly, research backs this up. A 2016 study found that good leadership doesn't necessarily reduce employee turnover. Why? Because good bosses develop their employees so well that they become prime candidates for better-paying jobs with more responsibility elsewhere. This suggests that respect and clear expectations can be more powerful tools than just being likable. But, and this is a huge but, Machiavelli adds a critical warning. A leader must, above all, avoid being hated. He says a ruler must never seize property or bring dishonor on his people, because that's when fear curdles into contempt. In the corporate world, this means you can be demanding, but you must be fair. You can set sky-high standards, but you can't be arbitrary or hypocritical. A feared leader who is also respected can drive a team to do amazing things. A leader who is hated just breeds resentment and eventual collapse. Think about Steve Jobs. He was notoriously difficult and demanding. He was known for yelling at employees, bluntly calling their work shit, and pushing for a level of perfection that drove people to their limits. By all accounts, he was a leader to be feared. So why did he inspire such intense loyalty and build the most valuable company in the world? Because his ferocity was always in service of a clear, brilliant vision. Employees might have feared his temper, but they respected his genius. The fear wasn't personal. It was about the dread of failing the incredibly high standards he set for himself and for them. He walked that razor's edge, proving that when used right, fear, or maybe we should call it profound respect, is a much stronger tool for achieving greatness than love alone. The second principle, the duality of corporate strategy. Machiavelli offers this powerful metaphor for leadership. A ruler must be both a lion and a fox. He wrote, "The lion cannot defend himself from snares, and the fox cannot defend itself from wolves. Therefore, it is necessary to be a fox to discover the snares and a lion to terrify the wolves." And this isn't just a slick metaphor. It's a psychological blueprint for navigating the brutal world of business. The lion is all about strength, courage, and brute force. This is the leader who isn't afraid to take charge, make huge bets, and crush threats head-on. In business, that's the CEO who launches a hostile takeover, drops a disruptive product on the market, or makes the painful call to restructure the company to keep it alive. It's raw power. Think of Microsoft in the 90s under Bill Gates. It was a lion using its market dominance to aggressively muscle out competitors and make Windows the king of the computing world. The lion's power is in its directness. But strength by itself is a liability. A lion, Machiavelli pointed out, can stumble right into a trap. That's where the fox comes in. The fox is about cunning, strategy, and seeing the bigger picture. The fox is the leader who can read the political tea leaves in the boardroom and use intelligence, and sometimes a bit of deception, to outsmart rivals. The fox doesn't use brute force. It uses cleverness. It's the strategist who pulls off a surprise partnership, the negotiator who gets an amazing deal by knowing the other side's weaknesses, or the marketer who subtly shapes how the public thinks. A leader who's only a lion will eventually get outsmarted. They'll get caught in the traps of market shifts or internal politics they never saw coming. On the other hand, a leader who's only a fox can be too clever for their own good, lacking the raw power to actually act on their plans. The real genius is being able to be both. It's knowing when to roar and when to quietly set a trap. Steve Jobs is again the perfect example. He was a lion when he declared thermonuclear war on Google's Android. That was pure force. But he was also a fox. His famous reality distortion field was a sly form of manipulation, an uncanny ability to convince everyone to believe in his vision, even when it seemed impossible. That was the fox's art of persuasion. Or look at Amazon. The company acts like a lion when it bulldozes into a new market, using its massive scale to sell at a loss and drive out smaller competitors. But it's also a fox. Its sophisticated algorithms that predict what you want to buy are a form of cunning that subtly influences your decisions. And its move into cloud computing with AWS was a brilliant, fox-like play that created a whole new dominant business out of an opportunity no one else saw. The psychological lesson is clear. You have to cultivate this duality. Develop the courage of the lion, but also the strategic intelligence of the fox. The best leaders aren't one or the other. They know how to switch between these two modes as needed. The third principle, virtù and the defeat of fortune. One of the most powerful psychological ideas in Machiavelli's work is virtù. Now, this isn't virtue like being a good person. For Machiavelli, virtù is a mix of ambition, decisiveness, courage, and the raw will to impose yourself on the world. It's about being the master of your own destiny instead of a passive victim of fate, which he called fortuna or fortune. Machiavelli believed fortune controls about half of our lives, but she leaves the other half for us to control. That's where virtù comes in. He described fortune as a raging river. When it floods, it wipes out everything. But a leader with virtù spends the quiet times building dams and levees to prepare for the flood. In business, that flood is market crashes, disruptive tech, or a global pandemic. A company without virtù gets washed away. A company with it has the foresight to not only survive the disaster, but to channel its power for its own gain. This is all about having a proactive mindset. Leaders with virtù don't wait for things to happen. They make things happen. They are, as Machiavelli said, adventurous rather than cautious, because fortune is a woman, and to master her you have to be bold. In business, this translates to a philosophy of embracing smart risks and never ever standing still. Stagnation is death. Take the classic story of Blockbuster versus Netflix. Blockbuster was a monster of a company, but it had no virtù. It got fat and happy with its brick and mortar stores and late fees. When the internet created the flooding river of digital streaming, Blockbuster saw it coming, but was too slow and indecisive. It became a victim of fortuna. Netflix, on the other hand, is the poster child for virtù. Its first move was DVD by mail, a direct attack on Blockbuster. But the founders didn't stop there. They had the foresight, the virtù, to see streaming was the future. They started building the digital dams long before the flood hit. Then they made a bold move that seemed crazy at the time. They cannibalized their own successful DVD business to go all in on streaming. When streaming got crowded, they showed virtù again by pivoting into a full-blown production studio, pouring billions into original content. At every step, Netflix has shaped its circumstances instead of being shaped by them. Amazon is another master of virtù. Jeff Bezos has always run the company with an eye on the future, constantly adapting. From an online bookstore to an everything store, to a cloud computing giant, to a smart home powerhouse. Each move was an act of virtù, seizing an opportunity and imposing its will on the industry. The psychological lesson is that success isn't a destination, it's a constant process of action. Leaders have to build deep resilience and a bias for bold decisions. Because in today's world, virtù isn't just an advantage, it's a requirement for survival. The fourth principle, conquering the yes-man culture. Machiavelli knew that one of the deadliest threats to any leader is a subtle one: flatterers. He wrote, "There is no other way of guarding oneself from flatterers except letting men understand that to tell you the truth does not offend you." This is a masterclass in organizational psychology, hitting on the yes-man culture that has sunk countless companies. A leader surrounded by sycophants is a leader living in a fantasy world of their own making. Flatterers tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. They filter out bad news, blow successes out of proportion, and nod along with your worst ideas. It creates a dangerous echo chamber where bad decisions go unchallenged. And the psychological pull is huge. It feels great to be told you're a genius. But Machiavelli saw this comfort as a poison that leads straight to ruin. Modern research confirms this. One study found that CEOs who get flattered into overconfidence make biased, terrible decisions because no one dares to challenge them. The problem isn't that leaders are dumb. It's that power naturally shields them from the truth, and they start to unconsciously reward the yes-men who will eventually cause their downfall. Machiavelli's solution was radical and still is. A leader must deliberately create an environment where honest, even brutal, criticism is rewarded, not punished. This takes incredible psychological security. You have to be willing to put your ego on the back burner for the good of the company. He advised a ruler to pick wise counselors and give only them the freedom to speak the truth, and only on topics he asks about. This is a bedrock principle of great modern leadership. The legendary CEO of General Motors, Alfred P. Sloan, was famous for this. During a meeting, he once said, "Gentlemen, I take it we are all in complete agreement on the decision here." When everyone nodded, he replied, "Then I propose we postpone further discussion to give ourselves time to develop disagreement and perhaps gain some understanding of what the decision is all about." Sloan knew that agreement without debate is a huge red flag. Ray Dalio, the founder of the hedge fund Bridgewater Associates, built his entire company on what he calls radical transparency. Employees are required to openly challenge each other's ideas, no matter their rank. It's a system designed to systematically destroy the kind of groupthink Machiavelli warned about, ensuring that the best ideas win, not just the most powerful person's ideas. The challenge for any leader is to prove you won't shoot the messenger. It's not enough to say you have an open-door policy. You have to show, with your actions, that you welcome bad news and challenges to your assumptions. The bottom line from Machiavelli is a call for intellectual honesty. To succeed, you have to fight a constant war against your own ego and the comforting lies of flatterers. You have to seek the truth, no matter how much it stings. The fifth principle: when the ends justify the means. This leads us to the most morally tangled part of Machiavellian thinking, summed up in the phrase everyone attributes to him: the ends justify the means. Now, he never wrote those exact words, but his work definitely captures the sentiment. He argued that when the act accuses, the result should excuse. In the high-stakes game of business, this means a leader sometimes has to do things that would be considered ruthless in a personal context to achieve a greater good for the company. This is, without a doubt, his most controversial idea, and it walks a tightrope between pragmatic leadership and straight-up corporate evil. For Machiavelli, this wasn't a license for cruelty. It was just a recognition that the world of power plays by a different set of rules. A leader who is always bound by conventional morality will get crushed by those who aren't. He wrote that a leader must learn how not to be good and to use this knowledge according to the necessity of the case. In the business world, you see this principle everywhere. Think about mass layoffs. When a company is facing a crisis, laying off thousands of people is a brutal act that causes real human suffering. A leader focused on being loved might delay that decision, hoping things turn around, and in doing so, risk killing the entire company and putting everyone out of a job. A Machiavellian leader understands that the end, the company's survival, justifies the mean, the layoffs. They'd act decisively, make the painful cut, and then work to rebuild. Amazon's early strategy is a perfect example. In its quest to dominate the market, Amazon deliberately sold books and other products at a huge loss. It was a ruthless tactic with a clear end goal: drive smaller, independent competitors out of business. Ethically, it's very questionable. But from a purely Machiavellian viewpoint, it was brilliant. The end, achieving a near monopoly, justified the predatory means. The result for Amazon was global dominance. High-stakes negotiations are another arena for this. We like to think of negotiation as a win-win, but often it's a zero-sum game. Studies show that people with Machiavellian personality traits often crush it in these situations. They're more willing to use deception and exploit weaknesses to get a better deal. They're not there to make friends. They're there to win. The psychological key is a kind of emotional detachment and a relentless focus on results. It requires a leader to separate their personal moral code from the strategic needs of their job. This doesn't make them a psychopath. It makes them a pragmatist. But this is also the most dangerous Machiavellian principle. Without a strong ethical compass, it can lead to disaster. The key, as Machiavelli might say, is to use these means only when absolutely necessary and to always maintain the appearance of virtue. A leader seen as wantonly cruel will lose all support. It's a powerful weapon, but it can easily backfire. The sixth principle, harnessing envy and rivalry. Machiavelli was a sharp observer of people, and he knew that two of the most powerful engines of human behavior are ambition and envy. He understood that people are naturally ambitious, and that this inevitably creates conflict and rivalry. A smart leader, he argued, doesn't just know this. They learn how to manage and even harness these forces for their own benefit. In a company, this is the art of managing internal politics. Every office is filled with ambitious people fighting for promotions, resources, and influence. A naive leader might try to stamp out all rivalry in the name of teamwork. A Machiavellian leader knows that ambition is an engine. The goal isn't to turn it off. It's to steer its power in a productive direction. You see this in how companies structure incentives. Smart CEOs create systems of controlled competition, sales leaderboards, performance bonuses, promotion contests. These all channel employees' natural ambition into a race that drives results for the company. The danger, of course, is that this rivalry turns toxic, leading to backstabbing and silos. Machiavelli's advice here was subtle. He suggested a ruler should keep a close eye on their top lieutenants. You might encourage a healthy rivalry between two talented executives, forcing them to compete on performance, but you also make sure neither one gets powerful enough to challenge you. It's a balancing act, stoking the fire of ambition just enough to get results, but not so much that it burns the place down. Steve Jobs was a master of this. He was famous for pitting teams against each other at Apple. The legendary rivalry between the Macintosh and Lisa teams is a textbook case. He fostered intense competition, believing it would push both teams to create their best work. While it caused a ton of friction, it led directly to the Mac's revolutionary breakthroughs. A leader also has to be a psychologist when it comes to envy, the destructive side of ambition. A ruler who showers favor on one person will create envy in everyone else. So, a wise leader distributes rewards and punishments in a way that feels fair and merit-based, not based on personal favoritism. They might publicly praise a team's success to inspire others, but they're careful not to create a permanent class of favorites that breeds resentment. This applies to entire departments too. Sales versus engineering, marketing versus finance. They all have their own agendas. The Machiavellian CEO understands these competing interests and plays them off one another when needed, ensuring no single department becomes so powerful as to dictate company strategy. The psychological insight is that you can't erase human nature. You can't get rid of ambition or rivalry. A leader who pretends they can is a fool. The truly successful leader accepts these darker parts of our psychology and learns to conduct them like an orchestra, turning the noise of individual ambition into a symphony of corporate success. The seventh principle, Machiavellianism in the age of AI and data. If Machiavelli were alive today, he'd be obsessed with Silicon Valley. The tools of power he could only dream of, mass surveillance, psychological profiling, influencing millions in real time, are now just business as usual. The principles he laid out for a 16th century prince have found their ultimate expression in the hands of tech giants. Machiavelli knew that information is power. He told the prince to be a constant inquirer, to understand everything about his territory and his people. Today, companies like Google, Meta, and Amazon are the ultimate constant inquirers, collecting oceans of data on our every click, search, and purchase. This data gives them a god-like view of the public, allowing them to predict human behavior with stunning accuracy. Controlling perception was another of Machiavelli's core ideas. He advised a leader to carefully craft their public image and control the story. Modern AI-powered marketing is the perfection of this. Algorithms don't just sell you a product. They sculpt your reality. They analyze your micro-behaviors, the milliseconds you pause on a photo, the sentiment of your posts, to build a psychological profile. Then they feed you personalized content that feels less like an ad and more like a personal discovery. As Machiavelli might see it, the greatest victory is when your opponent doesn't even know they've been conquered. The consumer believes they're making a free choice, while AI quietly shapes their decisions. Then there's the principle of creating dependency. A prince, Machiavelli wrote, should make himself essential to his people. This is exactly what digital ecosystems do. Apple's walled garden, Amazon's Prime ecosystem, Google's suite of apps, they all create a powerful dependency. The cost and inconvenience of leaving becomes so high that we become willing subjects in their digital kingdoms, trading our autonomy for their convenience. It could even be argued that some companies employ what Machiavelli called a manufactured crisis. He observed that disrupting the status quo creates an opportunity for a leader to consolidate power. In tech, this is the entire move fast and break things ethos. By launching a technology that upends an entire industry, a company creates chaos. And in that chaos, they position themselves as the new order. Uber did this to taxis. Airbnb did this to hotels. In each case, a manufactured crisis allowed a new prince to take the throne. The ethical problem here is obvious. Rejecting these powerful AI tools on moral grounds is noble, but in the hyper-competitive tech world, it could be corporate suicide. Your rivals won't hesitate. This forces a Machiavellian choice on today's leaders: learn how not to be good, and use that knowledge when you have to, or risk getting crushed. The psychology of influence and control that Machiavelli outlined 500 years ago hasn't changed. What's changed is the terrifying scale and efficiency of the tools. The modern CEO, armed with AI and big data, has become a digital prince, ruling over an empire of users in ways Machiavelli could only have dreamed of. So, we've journeyed through the shadowy corridors of power, from 16th century Italy to the glass-walled boardrooms of today. We've seen how these timeless and, let's be honest, uncomfortable psychological principles are still running the show. These ideas are powerful, and like any power, they can be used for good or for ill. But understanding them is the first step to navigating the world as it is, not as we wish it were. If you found this deep dive into the psychology of power valuable, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more content that decodes the hidden forces shaping our world. And now for the comments. Which of these Machiavellian principles do you see most often in your own workplace? Let us know your thoughts below. we'll pin the most insightful comment. So, what's the bottom line after dragging Machiavelli's 500-year-old ghost into the 21st century? We've learned that the fundamental psychology of power is timeless. The operating system of human nature, driven by ambition, fear, and self-interest, hasn't had a major update in millennia. We broke down 7 key principles from this ruthless playbook. We saw that being feared is really about commanding respect. We learned that a great leader must be both a lion and a fox, blending bold strength with clever strategy. We explored virtue, the relentless drive to master your destiny through action. We uncovered the poison of the yes man culture and the need for leaders to embrace criticism. We confronted the messy idea that the ends can justify the means. We saw how a smart leader can harness ambition and rivalry to fuel success. And finally, we saw how all of this has been put on steroids in our modern world of data and AI. The enduring lesson of Machiavelli isn't to be a monster. It's a challenge to be a realist. To ignore these principles is to leave yourself defenseless against those who won't. By understanding this darker side of strategy, we are better equipped to see it, defend against it, and maybe, just maybe, use it wisely. Because in the end, power is a game. The only question is whether you're a player or a pawn. And Machiavelli's enduring legacy is that he gave us the rulebook for the players. Thanks for watching.